Hi everyone, welcome to TSAM Digital. My name's Amy, and in today's interview, we are bringing to you an interesting conversation on investing in a data-savvy marketing team brought to you by Kurtosys. Who is Kurtosys, you might ask? The mission of Kurtosys is to help investment managers deliver data and insights to their clients with accuracy and at scale. From client reporting and client portals to global investment website solutions, their capabilities are focused to make reporting and marketing team lives easier. The Kurtosys team is proudly sponsoring and will attend TSAM, the Summit for Asset Management East Coast, on Thursday, the 6th of October, 2022 in New York. Let me introduce Patrick McKenna, Chief Product Officer and Chief Revenue Officer at Kurtosys, here in conversation with Ryan Glister, the Senior Director of Marketing Technology and Operations at Transamerica.
Well, hi everyone. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Ryan Glister. Ryan is the Senior Director of Marketing Technology and Operations at Transamerica. So he's responsible for a variety of technologies within the distribution team there. So Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. I think it would be great if you could just give us a brief overview of what you're responsible for there at Transam.
Yeah, so I work in the individual solutions area, which is basically mutual funds, annuities, and insurance. And my responsibilities are primarily around what I would call the publication end of the marketing content. So that's going to be content management on the web, Salesforce, Marketing Cloud emails, distribution of those, and some Salesforce enablement tools. The other things that kind of go into it are going to be creation of like tasks, leads within Salesforce, KPIs, data integrity, so reporting and analytics, things of that nature. And then the last part of it would be what's sort of relevant here on the Kurtosys side is the actual publication of performance data on a daily, quarterly, monthly basis for the annuities as well as mutual funds and money market business.
They keep you busy, clearly.
Yeah, pretty busy, and it's a pretty small team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that is probably a really interesting topic to start with is how you deal with sourcing and disseminating data. I think access to data is widely cited as one of the either the enabling or disabling factors in actually successful marketing projects, client reporting projects. And I think given that much of your data at Transamerica comes from external managers, I'm interested if you could share some of the insights around the challenges you had as you built out that infrastructure, the lessons learned perhaps for other firms in the US at kind of, I guess that might be looking to invest in this area or to make some improvements.
Yeah, it's definitely the biggest challenge of implementing a solution like this, and in general of, I would say, my day-to-day job, data integrity, whether that be related to the source data for the publication of like the funds and VA sub-accounts and things of that nature, or even when you're looking at the data within like the CRM, so we use Salesforce as our CRM, and ensuring that data integrity is paramount to being successful, and it's also the biggest challenge on a day-to-day. From our side, the thing that I typically would tell anybody who has a role similar to mine is you need to have people embedded within your marketing team that have those skills and capabilities, who understand data, who are able to help basically kind of do that cleanliness checks and things like that, as well as who know how to do ETL, so sort of the extract, transform, load type tasks. Because, to your point, Patrick, you're going to have data, like particularly us in the sub-advised world, we have data that comes in that's disparate in format, in timing, even in things at times that are a little more nuanced, like precision. And so if you don't have someone who has or team members who have the ability to help you with that, and you have to always go external and ask IT or another analytics group, personal opinion is you're going to have a hard time managing it in a timely fashion. So,
yeah. And it's an interesting twist to how you have approached it. I know that how we work together certainly is you connect directly to our system via our APIs and push the data, and that's not I wouldn't say it's not common, but it's certainly, particularly within the US market, we see more people that will still go that kind of route of sending flat files. I guess you get from your external managers a number of flat files that you sort of bring together, and then you have that automation in place to send to us. And I think that that's probably something that is quite a significant enabler in terms of how you create the efficiency there. If you were having to bring together flat files and then send them out again, that would be pretty, I think, probably pretty challenging. But that's sort of the status quo, I think, in lots of organizations, even quite large organizations.
Yeah, and honestly, for the annuity side of the house, particularly because the data itself is it's so related to the product and the death benefit, and that's what really drives the actual return on those sub accounts. It's the proliferation of results basically that gives us something like 30,000 different possible combinations on the back end. You would never get there if you were trying to do just straight up flat files. You actually have to have that ability to sort of move the data via APIs and to do that transformation before you load it into your back end. It would just be too complicated. The fund side, I can see where people, and we have a relative, 100 funds. So a relatively small number of funds. I think you could probably maintain it in a more traditional way. But you're going to have a lot more, hands on it and more focus on it, where our processes kick off overnight and sort of run on just a scheduled basis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really progressive cultural model to have that sort of technology skill embedded within a marketing team. Was that culturally challenging to put in place, or how did you kind of get that to be something that was accepted by the organization, or was it something that was there before?
It was not there before. And I was lucky. I hired someone that I had a previous working relationship with. They came with that background. I actually used to work at Western Union in global operations. And part of my background was I kind of kicked off their integration of data around their agent locations. So they have multiple products there. So you would sell, do remittance products, and they had different brands. So they weren't just Western Union. They had 3 other brands that they operated on. And then they sold things like money orders and things of that nature as well, bill payments, things like that. All of those had historically been disjointed. And so they had actually, they ran as their own business basically, and therefore they didn't really view a singular location as one location. And I worked with someone who had similar skills and actually was in the same department as the guy I ended up hiring to kind of bring that data together as part of a larger initiative, and to say, okay, well, this, store, grocery store 123 actually has these 5 different products and capabilities. Even though they may be, on the back end running independently, we gave them like a global universal ID. And that sort of mindset, and having someone who has that mindset about how do you actually take disparate data, bring it in, transform it, assign that global ID, that is fundamentally what you're looking for. Even in, it seems like a weird item here, but that's fundamentally what you're looking to do with your mutual fund data, because you might get your contributors and detractors from Morningstar. That's what we do. We get some of our daily performance data from State Street Bank. We get data from our sub-advisors. And so it's actually kind of ties into the exact same sort of methodology of you need some way to identify that each of those data elements have a global key. You have to transform them so that they're consistent. And then you have to be able to load them into the back end on Kurtosys so that you can actually unify your public.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because in many ways, I guess other industries might think about our industry as being forward-looking in terms of data and in terms of technology. But certainly, I think in some instances, certain firms have been slower to adopt that technology skill set into marketing. Whereas if you look into tech, and certainly within our team, we will usually bring in people who have that data literacy, because we understand that there are so many different touch points out there that we need to bring together. And so, I think it's really common that we see marketing teams adopting something like Snowflake to bring together all of their analytical data. And so there's this, I think there's this understanding, perhaps we'll see that in the industry, hopefully, that sort of adoption of more of that hybrid skill set where people are coming in who can speak the language of APIs and connect things together and be a little bit more data literate. And then obviously being able to demonstrate the ROI of that, I think will be probably pretty important as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And honestly, we use Alteryx here. And the reason we use Alteryx is because the person I hired had they were more familiar with that than other tools. The Western Union job, the guy knew Data Stage, so we used Data Stage there. Right. These tools are all somewhat interchangeable. They're hard to dislodge once you start to use it because you become so reliant on it. But it is in my mind, a necessity when you have disparate data sources. Absolutely. and you need to actually do ETL.
So for someone who might be in a similar position or someone who's running a marketing team, we're talking about, I know within the US market, the number of managers that run SMA strategies and mutual fund strategies, they tend to have relatively small marketing teams. They're fighting for budget. What's been your experience in terms of trying to demonstrate the ROI to be able to get that investment into a team like yours, and what kind of tips would you have in terms of how do you build out a roadmap and be able to show how it's driving business benefit along that continuum?
Yeah, and we have the same. Our business, I guess I'll back up. When I joined maybe 6 years ago, around there, we had, I want to say, like 5 to 7 people who worked on just the fact sheet production and commentary production. So it was all paper-based. It was like true marketing, collateral, leave behinds for sales. And then we had IT basically maintain the websites and things of that nature. And those teams were, by and large, only focused on mutual funds. So they really didn't touch the annuities business that much. And so the real ROI on, as far as the implementation here, was we were able to knock that down to the point where, for a while, I don't recommend it, but for a while during COVID, we were down to effectively one person who managed all the fact sheet, commentary production, the websites, so the daily updates, making sure that was on track, as well as all the annuities, performance data and websites, and we created new fund pages that were related to the sub accounts and things like that. So the actual suite of total content increased. It's probably 5 times what we were doing before, and we've removed the reliance on IT entirely. So they didn't, to your point, give us any budget back on that because they didn't really believe that marketing was going to take on all that activity. And we also increased our production schedule. So we produce our fact sheets and the printed content about 2 weeks faster than we did in the past, which, in aggregate gives our sales distribution team about 8 additional weeks of selling time every year. Yeah. So there's a big ROI on it at the end of the day. Yeah. But it does take time for it to build up and for people to learn the tools and understand the workflows and do the ETL and manage the data and that side of it. So you have to have a good team behind you, and I'm fortunate to have that.
No, absolutely. But it's interesting what you mentioned about COVID. I know for a lot of firms, the key person dependency became a big thing where they had automated processes. So that alone, I certainly feel that we're seeing a little bit of that in firms say, actually, what, we need to look at these places where we may have that sort of lack of redundancy in those resources. But I mean, there's a lot that those marketing teams can also be doing with that time when they're freed up to actually not focus on those operational tasks. I mean, the value of putting material in a salesperson's hands earlier, not be understated. There's obviously nothing worse than going into meeting with a client with old information where your competitors have much more up-to-date information. So that, I think, is a given. But then when you can actually be freed up to focus on other things, I think that's a really important point. So I think we're probably getting to the end here, but I am interested in what you're seeing a little bit down the road. I certainly know for us, we're always thinking about how new technology is going to be changing what is done within the marketing, but also in client reporting. Certainly, I know ESG is the biggest trend at the moment, and certainly we see the emergence of things like Snowflake. I certainly talked about a number of times on our blog and other conferences, but that is something I think is certainly going to change the game for lots of firms in terms of how they disseminate data. Obviously, it hasn't played out yet, but we certainly see a lot of adoption of that. What are you seeing at the moment at Transam, and are there other technologies or other trends that you think will impact you more, or perhaps the ones I've mentioned?
Honestly, the ESG, I would say in general in the States is a little bit slower than in Europe, and so we haven't really seen that much. We have some ESG funds. We've talked about it, but our commitment to it is probably a little bit less than what you would see in Europe at this point from the country on the U.S. side of the house here. What I do see that we've been getting sort of more requests or noise around is actually the frequency of our ability to publish updates around that are truly like more commentary and broader stroke type overviews. So you kind of think about the past years with the changes on inflation, the war in Ukraine, COVID, obviously, sort of the ins and outs of, are we out of it? Are we back in it? And the things that drive around the type of funds that people want to buy, and sort of their risk tolerance to those events. It's creating a need for us to be able to publish more frequently. And so that is the thing that we're probably currently having the most discussions around, is what can we do to support the business there. And it kind of ties back to your comment around, you don't want to be the one who goes into a sales meeting and your content is out of date compared to your competitors. And so we're looking at what resources do we have and ability do we have to maybe increase our frequency on some of that information.
I guess you're the kind of the mercy of the managers that you have funds with to be able to provide that level of reporting. So I'm assuming that they're providing that to you more frequently, and then it's a case of you providing that material.
Those are part of the current discussions.
Okay.
Candid. To figure out what frequency we can do. The good news is with the tool set that we have the capability to do it, provided we have the data and we have enough capacity just in general to actually do it on that higher frequency cadence, so that it's kind of built into the tool. We have the ability to effectively push the publish button and sort of roll those out, but you still have QA, you still have to go through compliance, you still have to actually publish the data itself. And so there is a bit of work that has to happen even when you have all the automation set up, and that's going to be the secondary part of the discussion is, okay, well, are we, fit and able to maintain a cadence that would be, let's say, monthly on some of this content versus quarterly?
Yeah, absolutely. So the ESG train hasn't hit you yet. I'm sure it will be coming soon. You will be obviously a little bit lagged from that. I think certainly here in Europe, we see obviously the need for everyone within the sort of the chain of investment down to the advisor to have that information and to be making recommendations based on it. Has been really, really impactful. So certainly I think for us, the variety of data that we are now accepting and then incorporating into reports, or our clients are rather via our tool, is growing. So I'm sure that will come soon, but can't be understated then the value, of course, having the fundamentals in place. I think some good messages there for your compatriots there in the US who are kind of in similar roles. And I think, Ryan, I have to thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I certainly hope to see you in person again soon, but I do appreciate you joining us here virtually. Thanks again. And we hope to see you all at the conference in a couple of weeks.
So thanks to Pat and Ryan there for some great insight, and Pat will be speaking at TSAM East Coast, as mentioned, on how can an integrated marketing platform address inconsistencies and enable sales efficiency, as well as leveraging automation to improve operational processes. How can technology solve enterprise challenges? So looking forward to seeing them in person, and hope to see you there too soon. Thanks, bye.